I should have trusted my instincts the moment I felt that first flicker of doubt. But when you've built a life with someone, when you've shared years of memories and dreams, you want to believe that the foundation you've created together is solid. I'm Elena Morrison, and this is the story of how I discovered the truth about my marriage, and how I made sure justice was served in the most unexpected way possible. My husband Marcus and I had been married for 23 years. 23 years of what I thought was partnership, loyalty, and love. We built a comfortable life together in Seattle. I worked as a senior consultant at a tech firm, and Marcus managed a mid-sized accounting practice. Our 2 children, Sophia and Daniel, were away at university, finally giving Marcus and me the opportunity to rediscover each other as a couple, not just as parents. Except that's not what happened. Instead, I found myself feeling more alone than ever. Marcus worked 5 days a week, but he always had Thursdays off. For months, I'd noticed subtle changes in his behavior. He'd become distant, distracted. When I'd come home from work, he'd already be there, but something felt off. I couldn't quite put my finger on it at first, but gradually, I realized he was arriving home just minutes before me on Thursdays. The timing was too precise, too calculated. I tried talking to him about it. "How was your day?" I'd ask, hoping for connection, for conversation, for anything that felt real. But his answers became vaguer, more evasive. "Fine," he'd say, barely looking up from his phone. "Just the usual errands. We used to cook dinner together. That was our thing, our ritual." But slowly, that changed too. When I'd offer to help him in the kitchen, he'd wave me away. When he'd cook, I'd find myself retreating to other parts of the house, feeling like an unwelcome guest in my own home. The intimacy we'd shared was evaporating, replaced by a polite distance that felt worse than any argument. Our physical relationship continued, but that's all it was, physical. There was no connection anymore, no spark in his eyes when he looked at me. He was going through the motions, and I knew it. I could feel it in every hollow gesture, every perfunctory kiss. I'm not proud of what I did next, but I had to know. I checked his phone when he was in the shower. Nothing. No suspicious texts, no hidden calls, no locked apps. I checked his email. Again. Nothing that seemed out of place. Everything appeared normal on the surface, which only made my suspicions grow stronger. Whatever he was hiding, he was being careful about it. So I made a decision. I hired a private investigator named Rachel Chen. When I met her at her office downtown, I got straight to the point. "My husband is doing something on Thursdays," I told her, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. "I need to know what it is. And I need you to be discreet." Rachel was professional, efficient. She didn't ask unnecessary questions or make judgments. "Give me 2 weeks," she said. It took her less than 1. The following Wednesday, my phone rang during a meeting. I saw Rachel's name on the screen and excused myself, my heart pounding as I stepped into an empty conference room. "I know what he's doing," Rachel said without preamble. "Can you come to my office tomorrow morning?" I barely slept that night. Marcus was right there beside me in bed, completely oblivious to the storm that was about to break over his head. Or maybe he wasn't oblivious. Maybe he just didn't care anymore. Thursday morning, I called in sick to work and drove to Rachel's office. She had coffee waiting for me, which I appreciated even though I knew I wouldn't be able to drink it. "Your husband is having an affair," Rachel said gently. "Every Thursday, he meets a woman named Victoria Brennan at the Riverside Inn downtown. They've been doing this for approximately 18 months. 18 months. A year and a half of lies, of betrayal, of him touching someone else while I waited at home like a fool. Seriously, I wanted to be absolutely certain before I told you." She turned her laptop toward me and pressed play. I watched as Marcus, my husband of 23 years, walked into a hotel room with a woman I'd never seen before. She was younger than me, maybe by 10 years, with auburn hair and a confident stride. Through the window of the room, which Rachel had somehow managed to capture from a building across the street, I could see them together. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. and tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. I won't describe what I saw in detail. It would serve no purpose, and honestly, the images are burned into my memory in a way I'll never forget. What struck me most wasn't the physical intimacy, it was everything else. The way they talked and laughed together, completely at ease. The way they moved around each other like a couple who'd been together for years. The comfortable familiarity of it all. This wasn't just sex. This was a relationship. Rachel had done her homework. She'd bribed someone at the hotel, got access to their records. Marcus, ever the gentleman, always paid for the room. The paper trail went back 18 months, like she'd said. Every single Thursday, without fail. They were creatures of habit, which made them easy to track, but also meant this wasn't some momentary lapse in judgment. This was deliberate, sustained, calculated. There's more, Rachel said, pulling up another file. Victoria Brennan is married. Her husband is Nathan Brennan, a cardiologist at Seattle General. They have 3 teenagers. I felt sick. Not only had Marcus betrayed me, but he was helping this woman betray her entire family. I spent that Thursday avoiding Marcus, which wasn't difficult since he'd been avoiding me for months. Friday was the same. The weekend dragged by in a blur of forced normalcy. I cooked breakfast, did laundry, smiled when necessary. All the while, my mind was racing, planning, calculating. Monday morning, I had an appointment with an attorney named Patricia Valdez, who specialized in family law. Her office was elegant but not ostentatious, and she had kind eyes that had probably seen too many marriages fall apart. "Tell me everything," Patricia said. I did. I showed her Rachel's evidence, explained the timeline, laid out every detail I knew. When I was finished, Patricia sat back in her chair and studied me carefully. "You have grounds for a divorce based on adultery," she said. "Washington is a no-fault divorce state, but proving adultery can impact property distribution and spousal support decisions. What are you hoping to achieve?" "I want him to pay," I said, "not just financially. I want him to understand what he's done, what he's destroyed, and I want to make sure Victoria's husband knows the truth too." Patricia's expression shifted slightly. "Be very careful here, Elena. Revenge can feel satisfying in the moment, but it often backfires. That said, if you're determined to pursue this path, I have some ideas about how to do it strategically." "I'm listening," I said. Over the next hour, Patricia outlined a plan. It was clever, it was legal, and it would absolutely devastate both Marcus and Victoria. For the first time in months, I felt something other than grief and betrayal. I felt powerful. The next Tuesday, both Marcus and Victoria received certified letters from the law offices of Valdez and Associates. The letters were carefully worded, requesting their presence at a meeting on Thursday morning at 10 o'clock to discuss an urgent legal matter. We deliberately chose Thursday, betting that they wouldn't mention these mysterious letters to each other, that they'd each assume it was some separate issue. We were right. Thursday morning, I arrived at Patricia's office at 9:30. Victoria arrived first at 9:45. She looked nervous, clutching her purse tightly as she took a seat in the waiting area. Marcus walked in at 9:50, and I wish I could have photographed his face when he saw Victoria sitting there. The color drained from his cheeks. Victoria looked equally panicked, her eyes darting between Marcus and the receptionist as if searching for an escape route. They sat as far apart as possible, not speaking, not even looking at each other. The tension in that waiting room must have been exquisite. I was in Patricia's private office, watching through a partially open door. At exactly 10 o'clock, I walked out into the waiting area. Marcus saw me first. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No words came out. Victoria's face crumpled as understanding dawned. "We'll be ready for you in just a moment," I said calmly. Then walked back into Patricia's office, leaving them to stew in their panic and confusion. A minute later, Patricia's receptionist, who was thoroughly enjoying this drama, opened the conference room door and said, "Mrs. Morrison, Mr. Brennan, Miss Valdez will see you now." They filed in like prisoners walking to their execution. Patricia and I sat on one side of the large conference table, with Rachel Chen beside us. Marcus and Victoria sat together on the other side, though they couldn't have looked more uncomfortable if they'd tried. Patricia took the lead. "Thank you both for coming today. I'm sure you're confused about why you're here, but that's about to become very clear. We are aware of your affair, which has been ongoing for 18 months. You've been meeting every Thursday at the Riverside Inn. Before you think about denying it, let me show you what we have." Rachel clicked a remote, and the large screen at the end of the conference room came to life. The video began to play. The video of them entering the hotel room, of them inside the room, of them leaving hours later with Marcus's hand on Victoria's lower back as she laughed at something he said. Victoria made a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob. Marcus just stared at the screen, his jaw tight. "That's illegal," Marcus finally said, his voice rough. "You can't record people in a private hotel room." There are some interesting legal nuances around expectation of privacy in hotel rooms, particularly when the recording is done from outside the room itself, Patricia said smoothly. "But let's not get bogged down in technicalities. Even if we couldn't use this footage in court, which is debatable, there are other people who would be very interested in seeing it. Your husband, for instance, Ms. Brennan." Victoria's face went white. "Please," she whispered. "Please don't." "I have children," she continued, her voice breaking. 3 teenagers. This would destroy them." "It would destroy my family." "Your affair already destroyed your family," I said, speaking for the first time. "They just don't know it yet." Marcus turned to look at me. "Elena, I cut him off. "Don't you dare try to explain or apologize right now. You don't get to speak unless I ask you a question." Patricia slid a manila envelope across the table to Marcus. "These are divorce papers, Mr. Morrison. Mrs. Morrison is being more than generous. She's offering a clean 50-50 split of all assets, agreeing to sell the house and divide the proceeds, and allowing you to keep your retirement account intact. She'll continue to cover Sophia and Daniel's college expenses entirely on her own, even though you should be contributing half." "And if I fight this?" Marcus asked, some of his old stubbornness emerging. "Then we file on grounds of adultery and make everything public record," Patricia said. "Every detail, every video, every hotel receipt. Your clients will know, your colleagues will know, your family will know." "Is that really how you want this to go?" Marcus slumped in his chair. Patricia slid a second manila envelope across to Victoria. "Ms. Brennan, this is a letter we intend to send to your husband, Dr. Nathan Brennan, along with copies of the evidence we've gathered. Unless what?" Victoria's voice was barely audible. "Unless you both agree to end your affair immediately and permanently. No contact whatsoever, not even professionally. If either of you breaks that agreement, if we find out you've so much as sent each other a text message, Dr. Brennan receives the full package, videos and all." Marcus and Victoria exchanged a look of absolute despair. "Additionally," Patricia continued, "Ms. Brennan, you're going to write a detailed confession of your affair. Every sordid detail, starting from the moment it began. You'll describe how it started, where you've met, how often, everything. You'll sign this confession, and we'll keep it on file. Insurance, if you will." "That's blackmail," Marcus said, but there was no fight left in his voice. "No, Mr. Morrison, it's leverage. Blackmail would require us to demand money or something else of value. We're simply ensuring compliance with the terms Mrs. Morrison is setting forth. You should be thanking her for her restraint." I leaned forward, looking directly at Victoria. "You're going to go home to your husband and your children, and you're going to be the best wife and mother you've ever been. You're going to appreciate what you have instead of throwing it away for some cheap thrills. Because if you don't, if you step out of line even once, I will personally hand-deliver every piece of evidence to Nathan myself. Do you understand? Victoria nodded, tears streaming down her face. I didn't hear you, I said. Yes, she choked out. I understand. I turned to Marcus. And you? You're going to sign those divorce papers without a fight. You're going to move out of our house by the end of the week. You're going to take your fair share and nothing more, and you're going to disappear from my life except when absolutely necessary for matters involving our children. Are we clear? Elena, can't we at least talk about, are we clear? I repeated, my voice hard as steel. Yes, he said finally. We're clear. Patricia stood up. Excellent, Miss Brennan. You have 24 hours to deliver that written confession to this office. Mr. Morrison, you have 48 hours to return the signed divorce papers. I suggest you both consult with your own attorneys, but I think you'll find that fighting this will only make things much, much worse for you. She opened the conference room door. We're finished here. Marcus and Victoria practically ran from the office. I sat there for a long moment, feeling the weight of what I'd just done settle over me. How do you feel? Rachel asked gently. Empty, I admitted. But also lighter somehow. Like I finally have some control back. Patricia nodded. The hard part is just beginning, Elena. Even with his cooperation, divorce is never easy. But you handled yourself well in there. You were strong. I had to be, I said. I've been weak for too long, believing his lies, ignoring the signs. Never again. Marcus moved out that weekend. He took his clothes, some furniture, his personal items. He didn't try to talk to me, didn't try to explain or apologize beyond one email that I deleted without reading. Victoria delivered her confession within the required timeframe, 5 pages of detailed admissions that were painful to read but necessary to have. The divorce proceeded smoothly after that. Marcus signed everything without contest. Within 6 months, our marriage was officially over. But I wasn't finished yet. You see, while Patricia and Rachel had been gathering evidence on Marcus and Victoria, they'd also looked into Victoria's life a bit more deeply. And they'd discovered something interesting. This wasn't Victoria's first affair. She had a pattern, a history of seeking attention from married men. Marcus was just the latest in a string of extramarital relationships that went back years. More importantly, Rachel had discovered that Victoria worked in pharmaceutical sales, and she'd been having an affair with one of her clients, a married doctor named Gerald Chen. That affair had started 2 months before Victoria ended things with Marcus, per our agreement. So Victoria had lied. She'd ended things with Marcus, yes, but only because she'd moved on to someone new. The agreement we'd made meant nothing to her. I called Patricia. Time to send that package to Dr. Nathan Brennan. Are you sure? Patricia asked. Once we do this, there's no taking it back. I'm sure, I said. Victoria made her choice. She chose to keep lying, keep cheating, keep destroying lives. Her husband deserves to know the truth. The package was delivered to Nathan Brennan's office at the hospital on a Tuesday morning. It contained copies of all the evidence from Victoria's affair with Marcus, including the videos, hotel receipts, and her written confession. It also included information about her current affair with Dr. Chen, complete with photographs Rachel had taken of them together at various restaurants and hotels around the city. I never met Nathan Brennan, but I heard through Rachel's contacts that he filed for divorce within a week. The divorce wasn't friendly. Victoria fought it, tried to claim the evidence was fabricated, but her own signed confession made that argument impossible. Nathan got custody of their 3 teenagers, who apparently wanted nothing to do with their mother once they learned the truth. Victoria's reputation in the pharmaceutical industry took a serious hit as well. Word of her affairs with clients spread through professional circles. As for Marcus, he tried to rebuild his life. He rented an apartment across town, continued working at his accounting practice. But his reputation had taken damage too. Some of our mutual friends had reached out to me after the divorce, and I'd been honest about what happened. Word spread. Several of his clients left his practice, uncomfortable working with someone they now saw as dishonest and untrustworthy. About 8 months after our divorce was finalized, Patricia called me with interesting news. "Marcus is seeing someone new," she said. "Her name is Jennifer Wu. She's a kindergarten teacher, divorced, no kids. From what my sources tell me, it seems fairly serious." "Good for him," I said, and I meant it. I didn't love Marcus anymore. The man I'd loved, or thought I'd loved, had never really existed. The real Marcus was someone who could lie to my face for 18 months while sleeping with another woman every week. I didn't want that man back. I didn't want revenge anymore either. I'd already gotten it. "There's something else," Patricia said. "Jennifer reached out to me. She wants to talk to you." That surprised me. Why? She didn't say exactly, but she seemed concerned about something. I told her I'd pass along the message. "It's entirely up to you whether you want to meet with her." I thought about it for a few days. What could Marcus's new girlfriend possibly want to discuss with his ex-wife? But curiosity got the better of me, and I agreed to meet her for coffee at a neutral location downtown. Jennifer Wu was petite and pretty, with kind eyes and a nervous energy that reminded me of a small bird. She arrived at the coffee shop exactly on time, spotted me immediately, and approached with obvious apprehension. "Mrs. Morrison, I'm Jennifer. Thank you so much for agreeing to meet with me." "It's Elena now," I said. "I went back to my maiden name. Please, sit down." She ordered a green tea and settled into the chair across from me, clutching her cup like a lifeline. "I'm sure you're wondering why I wanted to talk to you," Jennifer began. "I know this is probably strange, meeting your ex-husband's girlfriend. But I needed to understand something, and Marcus won't give me a straight answer." "What do you want to know?" I asked. "The truth about what happened between you two. Marcus told me you grew apart, that the marriage ended by mutual agreement. But I've heard things, whispers from people who knew you both, and something just doesn't feel right about his story." I studied her for a long moment. She seemed genuine, truly concerned, and she deserved to know what kind of man she was getting involved with. So I told her, not every detail, but enough. I told her about the affair, about the lies, about the confrontation in Patricia's office. Jennifer's face grew paler with each revelation. "Oh my God," she whispered when I finished. "He told me. He said your marriage had been over for years, that you were both just going through the motions. He made it sound like the divorce was a relief for both of you." "So, that's not even close to the truth," I said. "I was blindsided. I thought we were going through a rough patch, something we'd work through together. Instead, he was building a whole separate life with another woman." "So, that's not even close to the truth," I said, emotional. Jennifer set down her teacup with shaking hands. "I need to ask you something, and please be honest. Do you think he's changed? Do you think he's capable of being faithful?" Armstrong. I wanted to tell her what she needed to hear, wanted to be diplomatic and measured. But she'd asked for honesty, and she deserved it, Armstrong. "I don't know," I said. "People can change, but usually only if they do serious work on themselves, if they truly understand what they did wrong and why." "Has Marcus been to therapy? Has he talked about taking responsibility for his actions? Or has he just painted himself as the victim of a failed marriage?" Jennifer's silence was answer enough. "I'm not telling you what to do," I continued. "But I will say this. Pay attention to how he talks about his past relationships. If he blames everyone else for their failures, if he never takes responsibility, that's a red flag. And trust your instincts. If something feels off, it probably is." We talked for another hour. Jennifer told me about her own divorce, about her struggles to trust again after her ex-husband's betrayal. I found myself liking her, feeling protective of her even. She was a good person who'd already been hurt once. She didn't deserve to be hurt again. When we parted ways, Jennifer hugged me. "Thank you for being honest with me," I know you didn't have to meet with me at all. Take care of yourself, I said. And remember, you deserve someone who chooses you every single day, not just when it's convenient. 3 weeks later, Patricia called again. Jennifer broke up with Marcus. Apparently, she started asking him direct questions about the affair, about his role in ending the marriage. He stuck to his victim narrative, kept trying to paint you as cold and distant. She didn't buy it and ended things. Good for her, I said, feeling a sense of satisfaction that had nothing to do with Marcus and everything to do with Jennifer choosing herself. Meanwhile, my own life was moving forward in ways I hadn't expected. Patricia had introduced me to her brother, David Valdez, about a year after my divorce was finalized. David was a landscape architect, recently widowed after losing his wife to cancer 3 years earlier. He was kind, genuine, and refreshingly honest about his feelings and intentions. We started as friends, meeting for coffee or walks in the park. Gradually, those meetings became more frequent, the conversations deeper. David talked about his late wife with love and respect, never diminishing what they'd had together. He'd done the grief work, been to therapy, processed his loss in healthy ways. When he was ready to open his heart again, he did so thoughtfully and intentionally. Our first kiss happened on a cool autumn evening, standing on a bridge overlooking a lake. It was gentle and sweet, nothing like the passionate but ultimately hollow physical relationship I'd had with Marcus toward the end of our marriage. This felt real, felt right. David met Sophia and Daniel about 6 months into our relationship. I was nervous, worried about how my children would react to me being with someone who wasn't their father. But they surprised me. They'd been angry at Marcus for what he'd done to our family, and they genuinely liked David. He didn't try to replace their father or force a relationship. He simply showed up, was kind, and let things develop naturally. The eclipse from The Point changed lyrics. A year and a half after we started dating, David proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture with rose petals. It was just the two of us, sitting on his back porch after dinner, talking about our future. He simply looked at me and said, "I love you, Elena. I love the life we're building together. Will you marry me?" That's when I said, yes. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. We had a small ceremony with close friends and family. Sophia and Daniel were there, both beaming with happiness for me. Even Patricia came, along with her husband and, yes, her brother was marrying her former client. Rachel Chen was there too, grinning from ear to ear. Marcus wasn't invited, obviously, though he sent a brief email congratulating me. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say to him. That chapter of my life was closed, filed away in the past where it belonged. Our new life together was everything my marriage to Marcus hadn't been. David and I cooked dinner together every night, laughing and talking as we chopped vegetables and stirred pots. We took long walks, traveled to places I'd always wanted to see, made plans for the future. He was present, engaged, interested in my thoughts and feelings. When I talked, he listened. When I was struggling, he supported me. When I succeeded, he celebrated with me. Most importantly, I trusted him, completely, without reservation, and that trust was reciprocated. We'd both been through betrayals in our past relationships. His wife had had an affair before her cancer diagnosis, something he'd forgiven but never forgotten. We understood the importance of honesty, of choosing each other every single day, of protecting what we were building together. About 2 years into our marriage, I ran into Victoria at a charity event downtown. I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller somehow, diminished. Her confident stride was gone, replaced by a tentative uncertainty. She saw me and froze, clearly debating whether to approach or flee. I made the decision for her, walking over to where she stood awkwardly by the refreshment table. "Hello, Victoria," I said calmly. Elena, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't expect to see you here. It's a big city, but not that big, I said. How have you been? She laughed, a bitter sound without humor. Honestly, not great. Nathan got the house, the kids barely speak to me. I lost most of my accounts at work after everything came out. I'm rebuilding, but it's hard. I should have felt satisfaction at her admission. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? For her to face consequences for her actions? At standing there, looking at this broken woman, I mostly felt tired. I'm sorry your children are hurt, I said, and I meant it. They didn't deserve to be caught in the middle of all this. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. No, they didn't. Nothing I say or do seems to matter to them anymore. My oldest won't even take my calls. Give them time, I said, and get therapy if you haven't already. Not just for you, but to show them you're willing to do the work to become a better person. She nodded, wiping at her eyes. I am in therapy. It's helping, I think. I'm starting to understand why I kept sabotaging my marriage, why I sought validation from other men instead of working on my relationship with my husband. That's good, I said. Self-awareness is the first step. There was an awkward pause. I owe you an apology, Victoria said finally. I knew Marcus was married. I knew what we were doing was wrong. But I did it anyway, and I hurt you deeply. I'm truly sorry, Elena. You didn't deserve that. I looked at her for a long moment, considering her words. Part of me wanted to reject her apology, to tell her it was too little too late. But another part of me recognized the courage it took to approach me, to admit fault, to try to make amends, even when she knew forgiveness might not be possible. I appreciate that, I said finally. I'm not ready to say I forgive you. I don't know if I ever will be, but I can acknowledge that you're trying to do better at something. We stood there for another moment, two women whose lives had collided in the worst possible way, now trying to find some kind of peace with what had happened. I heard you remarried, Victoria said. I hope you're happy. I am, I said simply. Very happy. Good, she said, and she sounded genuine. You deserve that. I left the charity event shortly after, not wanting to prolong the encounter. Driving home, I thought about how far I'd come from that day in Rachel's office, watching that horrible video of my husband with another woman. The rage and grief that had consumed me then felt distant now, like it had happened to someone else. I'd been through hell, but I'd come out the other side. Stronger, wiser, more aware of my own worth. I'd learned that I didn't need a man to complete me, that I could stand on my own 2 feet. And when I chose to share my life with someone again, it was from a place of wholeness, not need. That I could stand on my own 2 feet. And when I chose to share my life with someone again, it was from a place of wholeness, not need. And when I chose to share my life with someone again, it was from a place of wholeness. Strong post to everybody we encounter. Finally, after the event, David wrapped his arms around me and came over to greet me with a kiss. David wrapped his arms around me. You're a remarkable woman, Elena Morrison Valdez. You know that? I leaned into his embrace, feeling safe and loved and valued. I'm learning, I said. That night, as I lay in bed next to my husband, listening to his steady breathing, I thought about the journey that had brought me to this moment. The pain, the betrayal, the revenge, the healing, all of it had been necessary, each step leading me to where I was now. Marcus had tried to break me, to diminish me, to make me feel like I wasn't enough. Instead, he'd freed me to discover my own strength, to build a life that was authentically mine, to find love that was real and honest and true. I never saw Marcus again after my wedding to David. I heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to Portland for a fresh start. His accounting practice had struggled after the divorce. Enough clients had left that he'd eventually sold it and taken a position with a larger firm in Oregon. Apparently, he was dating someone new, a woman who worked in marketing. I wished him well, genuinely. Not because I'd forgiven him. That would probably take more time than I had left in this life. But because holding on to anger and resentment was like drinking poison and expecting him to die. He'd taken enough from me. I wasn't going to give him my peace of mind, too. Sophia and Daniel both graduated from university with honors. They'd weathered the storm of their parents' divorce remarkably well, largely because I'd been careful not to poison them against their father, despite what he'd done. They maintained a relationship with Marcus, though it was strained and distant. They spent holidays with David and me, visited Marcus occasionally, but without enthusiasm. "You know, Mom," Sophia said to me one Thanksgiving as we prepared dinner together, "I used to think what Dad did was just a mistake, a moment of weakness. But the older I get, the more I understand how deliberate it all was. How many lies he told, how many times he chose to deceive you. I don't know if I can ever respect him the way I used to. He's still your father," I reminded her gently. "He loves you and Daniel, even if he made terrible choices in his marriage." "I know," she said, "but it's hard, and it makes me more careful in my own relationships. I never want to be like him, and I never want to end up with someone like him either." "That's wisdom," I said. "Hard-earned wisdom. Use it." Daniel was quieter about his feelings regarding the divorce, but I knew it had affected him deeply. He'd become more protective of me, more attentive. When he met David for the first time, he'd actually pulled him aside for a private conversation. David told me later that Daniel had looked him straight in the eye and said, "If you hurt my mom the way my dad did, you'll answer to me." End of period. And David had respected that, had shaken Daniel's hand and said, "Your mother deserves to be treated like the remarkable woman she is. I intend to spend every day proving I understand that." End of strong. Years passed. David and I built a beautiful life together. We renovated his house, turning it into our home. We traveled to Italy, to Japan, to New Zealand. We hosted dinner parties with friends, spent lazy Sundays reading the newspaper and drinking coffee, celebrated every milestone with enthusiasm and joy. I advanced in my career at the tech firm, eventually becoming a VP of operations. David's landscape architecture business flourished, his designs winning awards and attracting high-profile clients. We were both successful in our own rights, but we never let work consume us the way Marcus and I had let it consume our marriage. We made time for each other, always. Date nights every week, no exceptions. Weekend getaways whenever we could manage them. Small gestures of affection and appreciation woven throughout our daily lives. We'd both learned the hard way what happened when you took your partner for granted. Neither of us was willing to make that mistake again. One afternoon, about 5 years after David and I married, I received an unexpected phone call from Nathan Brennan, Victoria's ex-husband. "Mrs. Valdez, this is Nathan Brennan. I apologize for calling out of the blue, but I wanted to thank you." I was confused. "Thank me? For what? For sending me that package years ago? The one with evidence of Victoria's affairs. I know it couldn't have been easy to compile all that information, and you had no obligation to share it with me. But you did, and it changed my life." I didn't know what to say. "I'm glad it helped you, though I'm sorry you had to go through that pain. I would have kept living a lie, kept being made a fool of. Because of you, I was able to get out, to protect my kids, to start over. I've actually remarried to a wonderful woman named Sarah. We're very happy." "That's wonderful," I said, genuinely pleased for him. "Your children must be adults now." "They are, and they're doing well. It took them a while to process everything with their mother, but they've found peace with it. Victoria's been working on herself, going to therapy, making amends where she can. I don't think we'll ever be friends, but we're civil now, for the kids' sake." "That's mature of you," I said. "I called because I wanted you to know that your actions that day, as difficult as they must have been for everyone involved, they led to better outcomes for a lot of people. My kids, me. probably even Victoria, in the long run. So thank you, Elena. Truly. Sorry we hung up. I sat for a long time thinking about his words. I'd spent so much energy in the immediate aftermath of discovering Marcus's affair, focused on revenge, on making them pay for what they'd done. But in the end, what I'd actually done was reveal the truth. And yes, that truth had been painful, had caused upheaval and heartbreak, but it had also freed people from living lies, allowed them to make informed choices about their lives, opened the door to healing and growth. And she said, maybe that's what justice really looks like. Not revenge, but truth. Not punishment, but consequences. Not destruction, but transformation. And I shared Nathan's call with David that evening over dinner. He listened thoughtfully, then reached across the table to take my hand. And Strong was here. You did a brave thing back then, he said. Not just confronting Marcus and Victoria, but having the courage to burn down a life that wasn't working and build something new from the ashes. A lot of people stay in situations like that because they're afraid of what comes next. I was terrified, I admitted. But I was more terrified of spending the rest of my life with someone who saw me as an afterthought, someone convenient to come home to while he built his real life with someone else. I'm glad you chose yourself, David said, because ultimately, that choice led you to me, and I get to spend my life with the most incredible woman I've ever known. I smiled, feeling that familiar warmth spread through my chest. You're pretty incredible yourself, Mr. Valdez. Life continued its forward march. Sophia got engaged to a wonderful man named James, a software engineer with a kind heart and a terrible sense of humor that somehow made him even more endearing. They asked both David and me to be involved in the wedding planning, which touched me deeply. Sophia had fully embraced David as part of our family, and seeing her include him in such an important milestone meant everything. Marcus was invited to the wedding, of course. He was still Sophia's father, regardless of his past mistakes. I was prepared to be civil, to share space with him, for our daughter's sake. What I wasn't prepared for was the woman he brought as his plus one. Her name was Amanda, and she was barely older than Sophia, 26 to Marcus's 52. She had long blonde hair, wore a dress that was completely inappropriate for a wedding, and seemed utterly oblivious to the discomfort her presence created. Sophia was furious. I can't believe Dad brought her, she hissed to me as we watched Marcus parade Amanda around the reception. He's known her for 3 months. 3 months, and he brings her to my wedding like she's something serious? Your father has always had questionable judgment when it comes to relationships, I said carefully. Try not to let it ruin your day. This is about you and James, not about Marcus and his midlife crisis. Daniel was less diplomatic. He cornered Marcus near the bar and had what appeared to be a heated conversation. I couldn't hear what was said, but Marcus's face turned red, and Amanda suddenly seemed very interested in her phone. They left the reception early, much to everyone's relief. What did you say to him? I asked Daniel later. I told him that bringing someone younger than his own daughter to her wedding was embarrassing and disrespectful, Daniel said flatly. I told him that if he wanted to have any kind of meaningful relationship with his children, he needed to grow up and stop chasing women half his age to make himself feel young. I'm sure that went over well, I said, trying not to smile. He tried to defend himself, said Amanda makes him happy, that I should be supportive. I told him happiness based on someone else's youth and inexperience isn't real happiness. It's just ego. I hugged my son, proud of his willingness to speak hard truths. Your father probably won't listen, but I'm glad you said it anyway. True to form, Marcus's relationship with Amanda lasted another 2 months before imploding spectacularly. According to Sophia, who heard it from Marcus during one of their infrequent phone calls, Amanda had been using him for his money and connections, trying to launch a career as an influencer. When she realized Marcus didn't have the wealth or influence she'd imagined, she moved on to someone more useful to her ambitions. He actually sounded hurt, Sophia told me over lunch one day. Like he couldn't understand how someone could be with him for ulterior motives. The irony is completely lost on him. Your father has spent years avoiding self-reflection, I said. It's easier to blame others than to examine your own patterns and choices. Do you think he'll ever figure it out? Sophia asked. Ever really change? I considered the question carefully. I don't know. Change requires humility, the ability to admit you've been wrong, and the willingness to do hard work on yourself. Some people get there eventually. Others never do. And asterisk, in today's ending, in time, after compromising the same trajectory. Initial infatuation, rushed commitment, inevitable disappointment, and ending. His children grew increasingly distant from him, tired of being introduced to new girlfriends every few months. Exhausted by his refusal to learn from his mistakes. First, meanwhile, Daniel met someone wonderful. Meanwhile, Daniel met someone wonderful. And a rookie, Matt Maddock, also learned from his mistakes. Meanwhile, Daniel met someone wonderful. This man didn't have to be a rookie to be adequately kept and fresh all the time. And suddenly he wanted the best all along. At some point, meanwhile, Daniel contacted someone fresh from him several months ago. Once again, children grew increasingly distant from him. A woman named Priya, who worked as a pediatric nurse. She was smart, grounded, and had a refreshing directness that reminded me of myself. When Daniel brought her to meet David and me, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "I've heard what happened with your ex-husband. I want you to know that I take commitment seriously. I come from a family where marriage is forever, and that's how I approach relationships. Strong. I liked her immediately. Strong. They got engaged a year later, and their wedding was a beautiful blend of both families' traditions. Marcus attended alone this time, having apparently learned something from Sophia's wedding disaster. He was subdued, almost melancholy, watching Daniel and Priya exchange vows with an expression I couldn't quite read. Strong, at the reception, he approached me during a quiet moment. I was standing near the windows, watching David dance with Priya's grandmother, making the elderly woman laugh with delight. Strong. He seems like a good man, Marcus said quietly, nodding toward David. He is, I replied, keeping my voice neutral. He is. The kids really love him. Sophia talks about him more than she talks about me sometimes. I didn't know what to say to that. It was true, but pointing it out seemed unnecessarily cruel. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then said, I made a lot of mistakes, Elena. With you, with our marriage, with how I've handled things since. I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want you to know that I regret how things ended between us. How I ended things. I turned to look at him fully. He'd aged since our divorce. New lines around his eyes and mouth, gray threading through his hair more liberally. He looked tired and sad, like someone who'd finally started to realize what he'd lost. I appreciate you saying that, I said carefully. But Marcus, the time for regrets was 18 months into your affair, or before it even started. You made choices every single week for over a year. Those weren't mistakes. That was who you chose to be. So, I know, he said, his voice thick. I know that now. I just wanted to feel exciting again, to be seen as desirable. Victoria made me feel young and alive, and I was selfish enough to chase that feeling without thinking about who I was hurting. Strong. And have you stopped chasing that feeling? I asked. Because from what Sophia and Daniel tell me, you're still dating women half your age. Still looking for external validation instead of doing the internal work. Strong. He flinched, but didn't deny it. I'm trying. I started therapy a few months ago. Strong. That's good, I said, and I meant it. That's a step in the right direction. But Marcus, you need to understand something. The relationship you're looking for, the one where someone makes you feel alive and special and valued, That doesn't come from finding the right person. It comes from being the right person. From being someone worthy of that kind of love? He looked at me for a long moment, and I saw tears in his eyes. You deserved better than what I gave you. Yes, I said simply. I did, but I found better. I found someone who chooses me every day, who values me, who does the work to be a good partner. And more importantly, I found myself again. I remembered that I'm enough on my own, that I don't need someone else to complete me. Marcus nodded, wiping at his eyes. I'm happy for you, Elena, truly, and I'm sorry for all of it. I believe you, I said. But sorry doesn't undo the damage, Marcus. It just acknowledges it. What matters now is what you do going forward. Be a better father to Sophia and Daniel. Be honest with the women you date. And for God's sake, do the therapy work. Actually listen to what your therapist tells you and make changes. I will, he said. I promise. I wanted to believe him, but I'd learned long ago that Marcus's promises were worth very little. Time would tell whether he was genuinely committed to change or just feeling momentarily remorseful. David appeared at my side then, handing me a glass of champagne. Everything okay here? He asked, his tone polite but with an edge of protectiveness. We're fine, I said, accepting the glass gratefully. Marcus was just leaving. Marcus took the hint, nodding at both of us before retreating back into the crowd. What was that about? David asked, once Marcus was out of earshot. Apologies and regrets, I said. He started therapy apparently. Good for him, David said. Better late than never, I suppose. We stood together, watching our children, both of them now married, both of them happy and building lives with partners who cherished them. It struck me how differently things could have turned out. If I'd stayed with Marcus, if I'd chosen to ignore the affair or try to work through it, I would have taught Sophia and Daniel that betrayal was acceptable, that love meant tolerating disrespect and dishonesty. Instead, by choosing to leave, by demanding better for myself, I'd shown them what real partnership looked like. I demonstrated that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from something that's destroying you. And I'd given them a model of healthy relationship in David and me, showing them what it meant to choose each other daily, to communicate honestly, to face challenges together. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel. And tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. About 6 months after Daniel's wedding, I received a message on social media from Victoria. I hadn't heard from her since that chance encounter at the charity event years earlier. The message was brief. Elena, I know this is unexpected, but would you be willing to meet for coffee? There's something I'd like to discuss with you. I understand if you'd prefer not to. Victoria. I stared at the message for a long time, debating, what could Victoria possibly want to discuss after all these years? Part of me was curious. Another part wanted to simply ignore the message and move on with my life. In the end, curiosity won. We met at the same coffee shop where I'd talked with Jennifer Wu years earlier. Victoria arrived looking nervous, clutching her purse the same way Jennifer had. But unlike that encounter, Victoria seemed more put together now, more grounded. Thank you for coming, she said as we settled into our seats. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't, I admitted. What did you want to talk about? Victoria took a deep breath. I've been in therapy for years now, working through a lot of issues. My therapist suggested I make amends to people I've hurt, not to absolve myself, but to take responsibility for my actions. You're at the top of that list. You apologized at that charity event, I reminded her. I did, but I don't think I fully understood what I was apologizing for back then. I was sorry I got caught, sorry I lost my family, but I hadn't really grasped the depth of harm I caused you specifically. I waited, curious where she was going with this. I want you to know that I understand now what I took from you. Victoria continued. I didn't just sleep with your husband. I stole time from you. Time you could never get back. 18 months of your life where you were living a lie, where Marcus was coming home to you after being with me, where you were planning a future with someone who was already betraying you. I robbed you of the truth, of the ability to make informed choices about your own life. Her words hit deeper than I expected. This was different from her previous apology. This showed real understanding of the violation that infidelity represents. I also want you to know that I've done extensive work to understand why I made those choices, she continued. It wasn't about Marcus, not really. I was using affairs to avoid dealing with problems in my own marriage, to avoid facing my own insecurities and fears. Nathan is a good man, and I destroyed what we had because I was too much of a coward to do the hard work of maintaining a real relationship. How are things with your children? I asked. Victoria's expression softened. Better, actually. It's taken years, but they're starting to let me back in. My therapist encouraged me to stop making excuses and just be consistent, show up for them even when they pushed me away, prove through actions that I'd changed. It's working, slowly. I'm glad, I said, and I meant it. Your children shouldn't have to pay for your mistakes. They've been remarkable, honestly. More mature than I deserve. My oldest, Emma, she's in college now studying psychology. She told me that watching me work on myself, seeing me commit to therapy and actually change, that influenced her career choice. She wants to help people the way therapy helped me. We talked for over an hour. Victoria told me about her journey through therapy, the painful realizations she'd had about her patterns and behaviors, the work she was doing to become a better person. She'd left pharmaceutical sales and now worked as a counselor at a women's shelter, helping women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their lives. It's meaningful work, she said, helping women who've been hurt, who've lost themselves in bad relationships or bad choices. I understand what that's like now. I lived it, even if the circumstances were different. As we prepared to leave, Victoria said, I don't expect your forgiveness, Elena. I'm not asking for it. I just wanted you to know that I see you. I see what I did to you, and I'm genuinely sorry. You deserved so much better than what Marcus and I put you through. I considered her words carefully. I appreciate that, Victoria. And for what it's worth, I think the work you're doing now, both on yourself and for other women, that matters. That's how you make amends. Not through words, but through becoming someone who adds good to the world instead of harm. Thank you, she said quietly. That means more than you know. As I drove home, I realized something had shifted. The anger I'd carried toward Victoria, the resentment and bitterness, it had faded to almost nothing. Not because she'd apologized, but because I genuinely didn't care anymore. Her choices, her affair with Marcus, all of that belonged to a past version of my life that felt almost unrecognizable now. I'd built something beautiful from the rubble of that broken marriage. I had a partner who loved and cherished me, children who respected me, a career I was proud of, and a life filled with meaning and joy. Victoria's betrayal, which had once felt like it might destroy me, had ultimately freed me to find all of this. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you turns out to be the best thing, disguised as devastation. You just have to survive it long enough to see the other side. That evening, I told David about my conversation with Victoria. He listened quietly, then said, How do you feel about it? Surprisingly okay, I admitted. I think I've finally reached a place where what happened with Marcus and Victoria doesn't define me anymore. It's just something that happened. Part of my story, but not the whole story. Does that make sense? Perfect sense, David said, pulling me into his arms. You've healed, Elena. Really, truly healed. That's a gift, I agreed, and I couldn't have done it without you. It's a gift, I said, and I couldn't have done it without you anyway. Although I'm grateful that I get to be here with you anyway. It was a simple moment, unremarkable on the surface, but it contained everything that mattered. Love, trust, partnership, peace. We continued to pass, David and I celebrated our 10th wedding anniversary with a trip to Greece, fulfilling a dream I'd had since childhood. We explored ancient ruins, ate incredible food, swam in impossibly blue water, and spent long evenings talking about everything and nothing. Sophia and James had their first child, a beautiful baby girl they named Elena, after me. Holding my granddaughter for the first time, seeing my daughter become a mother, was one of the most profound experiences of my life. Sophia was patient and loving, attentive to her baby's every need. And James was an involved, hands-on father who changed diapers and walked the floor during crying jags without complaint. "You're both wonderful parents," I told them during one visit. "We learned from the best," Sophia said, smiling at me. "Well, from one of the best. We learned what not to do from Dad." It was said with humor, but there was truth underneath. Marcus had missed so much of Sophia and Daniel's childhoods, always working or distracted or, as it turned out, busy with his affair. He was trying to be more present with his grandchildren now, but the relationship was strained. The kids tolerated his visits but didn't seek them out. Daniel and Priya had twin boys, energetic toddlers who kept everyone on their toes. Watching Daniel with his sons, seeing how patient and engaged he was, I felt proud. He'd broken the cycle, chosen to be fully present for his children in ways his father hadn't been for him. One afternoon, while babysitting the twins, I received a call from Patricia Valdez. We'd stayed in touch over the years, occasionally meeting for lunch to catch up. But this call felt different, more formal. "Elena, I hope I'm not calling at a bad time," Patricia said. "Just wrangling two very energetic 3-year-olds, I said, watching as David played with the boys in the backyard. "What's going on?" "I received a call today from a lawyer representing Marcus. He wants to modify the divorce agreement." I felt my stomach drop. "Modify it how?" "He's claiming financial hardship and asking that you contribute to Sophia and Daniel's student loan repayments. According to the divorce agreement, you took on responsibility for their college expenses, but these loans are from their graduate programs, which weren't specified in the original agreement." I closed my eyes, feeling frustration wash over me. "Let me guess. He's been spending money on his string of girlfriends, and now he's broke?" I wouldn't phrase it quite that way in court, but yes, that appears to be the situation. However, I don't think he has a strong case. The divorce agreement was very clear, and you've already fulfilled your obligations above and beyond what was required. Still, he can file the motion, and we'd have to respond. "Do it," I said. "Fight it. I've paid more than my fair share, and he knows it. If he's broke, that's his problem, not mine." "I'll handle it," Patricia assured me. "Try not to worry. This is just Marcus being Marcus, trying to dodge responsibility for his own poor choices." The legal battle dragged on for 6 months. Marcus's lawyer argued that the spirit of the divorce agreement implied ongoing financial support for the children's education. Patricia countered that the agreement was crystal clear, that I'd already contributed significantly more than required, and that Marcus's financial difficulties were the result of his own irresponsible spending, not any failure on my part. In the end, the judge ruled in my favor, even ordering Marcus to pay my legal fees for defending against what the judge called a frivolous motion clearly designed to avoid parental financial responsibility. Marcus was furious, calling me directly for the first time in years. "You couldn't just help your own kids?" he raged. "You're so vindictive that you'd rather waste money on lawyers than help Sophia and Daniel?" "First of all, Marcus, don't call me again," I said coldly. "Any communication should go through our lawyers. Second, I've already paid for 4 years of undergraduate education for both of our children. Plus, I gave them money for their first cars, helped with their wedding expenses, and I'm currently contributing to a college fund for their children. I've done more than my share. What have you contributed lately, besides legal fees, from your pointless lawsuit?" "I don't have the money you have," he said. "You got the better deal in the divorce. I got exactly half, which is what you agreed to. If you've mismanaged your money since then, that's on you. Now, as I said, don't call me again." I hung up, my hands shaking with anger. David appeared in the doorway, concern on his face. "Marcus?" he asked. I nodded, trying to blame me for his own financial problems. "He hasn't changed at all, David. He's still the same person who lied to me for 18 months, still unable to take responsibility for his own choices." "Come here," David said, opening his arms. I walked into his embrace, feeling my anger slowly dissipate. This was the difference, I thought. When things went wrong, when I was upset or frustrated, I had someone who held me, supported me, reminded me that I wasn't alone. Marcus and I had never had that. Not really. Even before the affair, we'd been two separate people sharing a house, not true partners. "Thank you," I whispered against David's chest. "Always," he replied. Sophia and Daniel were both mortified when they learned about Marcus's lawsuit. Sophia actually stopped speaking to him for several months, angry that he tried to use her as leverage against me. Daniel was more measured in his response, but made it clear to Marcus that his actions were unacceptable. "We're adults now, Dad," Daniel told him during a tense phone conversation. "Our education expenses are our responsibility. The fact that Mom voluntarily helped us out of generosity doesn't obligate her to keep paying forever. You trying to force her to pay more after everything you put her through. That's just pathetic." Marcus's relationship with his children deteriorated further after that. He'd created a pattern of letting them down, of prioritizing his own desires over their needs, and they were tired of making excuses for him. They still saw him occasionally, still called on Father's Day and his birthday, but the warmth was gone. He'd become an obligation, not a joy. Meanwhile, my life continued to flourish. I was promoted again at work, becoming Senior Vice President of Operations. David's landscape architecture firm expanded, taking on commercial projects in addition to residential work. We bought a vacation home in the mountains, a cozy cabin where we could escape for long weekends and holidays. Our blended family gatherings were loud and chaotic and full of love. Sophia and James with little Elena and their new baby boy, Thomas. Daniel and Priya with the twins who were now starting kindergarten. David's late wife's parents, who'd embraced me as family, treating me with the same love and acceptance they showed David. My own parents, aging but still sharp, delighting in their great-grandchildren. Marcus was invited to family events for the children's sake, but he rarely attended. When he did show up, he was awkward and out of place, like a stranger crashing someone else's party. He'd bring yet another girlfriend, each one younger than the last, each one clearly uncomfortable with the family dynamics. They never lasted long, these girlfriends. He'd cycle through them, always searching for something he couldn't find because he was looking in the wrong places. One Christmas, when Marcus actually showed up for dinner, I overheard him talking to Sophia in the kitchen. He was complaining about feeling lonely, about how hard it was to find genuine connection. Sophia's response was blunt. "Maybe if you stopped chasing women half your age and actually worked on yourself, you'd have better luck. You're looking for someone to fix your problems instead of fixing them yourself. That's not attractive to anyone worth being with." "When did you become so hard?" Marcus asked, sounding hurt. "When I watched you hurt Mom for years and then refuse to learn anything from it," Sophia replied. "You're my father and I love you, but I don't respect the way you live your life. And until that changes, we're never going to be close." I heard Marcus leave shortly after, making excuses about another commitment. Sophia came and found me, looking troubled. "Did I go too far?" she asked. "No," I said. "You told him the truth. Whether he hears it or not is up to him." "I just want him to be happy," Sophia said. "Really happy, not just distracted by the next shiny relationship. Is that possible for someone like him?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Some people do the work and change. Others never do. Your father has to want to change, has to be willing to face uncomfortable truths about himself. So far, he's shown very little willingness to do that." "It's sad," Sophia said. He's missing out on so much. These kids, our lives, all of this. He's so focused on chasing some fantasy that he's missing the real things right in front of him. She was right. Marcus had everything he'd once claimed to want: a family, grandchildren, connections. But he was too busy looking elsewhere to see what was right there. David and I celebrated our 15th wedding anniversary with a renewal of vows ceremony. It was small, just immediate family and closest friends, held in the garden of our home. We'd planted that garden together over the years, choosing each plant deliberately, nurturing it, watching it grow and change with the seasons. It felt appropriate to celebrate our marriage there, surrounded by something we created together. As David and I exchanged new vows, promising again to choose each other every day, to face whatever came together, to love and honor and cherish, I felt overwhelmingly grateful. Grateful for the pain that led me here, grateful for the strength I'd found in myself, grateful for this man who saw me fully and loved what he saw. "You've made me happier than I ever thought possible," I told David, tears streaming down my face. "You've shown me what real partnership looks like, what it means to be truly chosen. You've given me a second chance at love," David replied, his own voice thick with emotion. "You've brought light and joy back into my life, shown me that there's always hope for new beginnings." Everyone was crying by the time we finished, even Daniel, who usually kept his emotions carefully controlled. Sophia gave a toast that had everyone laughing through their tears, talking about how David had become the father she'd always needed and how I'd taught her what strength looks like. "To Elena," Sophia said, raising her glass, "a woman who refused to settle for less than she deserved, who showed all of us that sometimes burning everything down is the only way to build something better. Mom, you're my hero." I looked around at the faces of the people I loved, at this beautiful life I built from the ashes of my broken marriage. Marcus wasn't there, hadn't been invited to this celebration. This moment was about the family David and I had created together, about the love we'd chosen and the life we'd built. If someone had told me, back when I was sitting in Rachel Chen's office, watching that devastating video, that I'd end up here, happier than I'd ever been, surrounded by love and joy and peace, I wouldn't have believed them. The pain had felt too raw, too consuming. The betrayal had felt like it would define me forever. But I'd survived it. More than that, I'd transformed it. I'd taken the worst thing that had ever happened to me and used it as fuel to create something better. I'd refused to let Marcus's betrayal diminish me, refused to let it poison my ability to trust and love again. That's the thing about betrayal. It can destroy you, or it can remake you. The choice is yours. You can let it define you, let it make you bitter and closed off, or you can use it as a catalyst for growth, for change, for becoming the person you were always meant to be. I chose transformation. I chose growth. I chose to believe that I deserved better, and then I went out and found it. Not just in David, though he's been an incredible partner, but in myself. I found my own strength, my own worth, my own voice, and in finding those things, I'd taught my children some of the most important lessons they'd ever learn. I'd shown them that love should never diminish you, that partnership should lift you up, that respect is non-negotiable. I'd demonstrated that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away from someone who's hurting you. And I'd proven that endings can be beginnings, that pain can lead to joy, that you're never too old or too broken to start over. As the sun set on our anniversary celebration, as David and I danced together in our garden while our family watched and cheered, I felt completely at peace. I'd traveled a long, painful road to get here, but every step had been worth it. Marcus had tried to break me. Instead, he'd freed me. And for that, in some strange way, I was almost grateful. Because without that breaking, I never would have discovered just how strong I really was. I never would have found David, never would have built this beautiful life, never would have become this version of myself that I'm genuinely proud to be. The story of my marriage to Marcus is over. It ended years ago, in Patricia's conference room, with two cheaters facing the consequences of their actions. That chapter closed, and a new one began. A chapter filled with light and love, with laughter and joy, with genuine partnership and mutual respect. This is the life I choose now. This is the person I've become, and I wouldn't change any of it. If you feel my words, show your support by liking the video and subscribing to the channel, and tell me from which city you belong, so I can see how far a woman's impactful voice can reach. Help me build this community so we can bring more truthful stories for you. The end of my story isn't actually an ending at all. It's a continuation, a daily choice to show up for the life I've created, for the people I love, for the woman I've become. Marcus is somewhere out there, still searching for whatever he thinks will make him happy, still cycling through relationships that never quite work out, still avoiding the hard work of genuine self-reflection. I hope someday he finds peace, not for my sake, but for his and for our children's. But whether he does or not, it doesn't affect me anymore. His happiness or lack thereof isn't my responsibility. It never was. My responsibility is to this life, to this love, to these people who've shown me what family really means. My responsibility is to wake up every day and choose gratitude, choose joy, choose to be fully present for whatever comes. And that's exactly what I do. David and I are planning another trip, talking about maybe taking all the grandkids to Disney World next year. Sophia is pregnant with her third child. Daniel and Priya are considering adopting a daughter to add to their family of boys. My career continues to thrive, and David's business is more successful than ever. But more than any of those external successes, more than the trips or the grandchildren or the professional achievements, what I'm most proud of is this. I chose myself. When it mattered most, when everything was falling apart, I chose to value myself enough to walk away from something that was destroying me. I chose to believe I deserved better, and then I did the work to create that better life. That's my legacy, not the marriage that failed, but the woman who emerged from that failure stronger, wiser, and more fully herself than ever before. That's what I want my children and grandchildren to remember, not the story of Marcus's betrayal, but the story of Elena's transformation, because that's the real story here. Not what someone did to me, but what I did with it. Not how I was broken, but how I put myself back together, creating something more beautiful than what existed before. This is my truth. This is my voice. And I'm grateful you've taken the time to listen. Thank you for being here, for witnessing my story, for being part of this community where women can share their truths without shame or judgment. Together, we're proving that our voices matter, that our stories have power, that we can support each other through the darkest times and celebrate together in the light. If my story resonated with you, if it gave you hope or courage or simply made you feel less alone, then it was worth sharing. And if you're facing your own betrayal, your own painful ending, I want you to know this. You will survive it. You will grow from it. And on the other side, there's a life waiting for you that's better than anything you can imagine right now. You just have to choose yourself. You have to believe you're worth choosing. And then you have to do the hard, painful, beautiful work of creating the life you deserve. I did it. And so can you. This is Elena Morrison Valdez, reminding you that endings are just beginnings in disguise, that pain can be transformed into power, and that choosing yourself is never, ever selfish. It's survival, it's strength, it's the first step toward everything you're meant to become. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write your own.